Shonen manga and anime is enormously popular, and is definitely the most popular subgenre of the medium for fans outside of Japan. These titles have endured longevity, supporting the growth of the anime community and helped with growth to a wider spectrum of genres within manga and anime. Even after the series have come to an end, they still keep fans interested in creating art, discussions, and theorizing about their favourites. You can't deny JoJo's Bizarre Adventure's influence, Dragon Ball's success and devoted fanbase, the unwavering popularity and mammoth content of One Piece, not forgetting how Bleach and Naruto both dominated everything for quite some time. But in my opinion, the shonen master is Yoshihiro Togashi. Yoshihiro Togashi in 1986 published a sport one-shot manga titled Toby Straight, about a boy with a violent, impulsive attitude as he attempts to become the captain of his school's baseball club. Togashi received the most prestigious award for new mangaka in Japan, getting the Tezuka Award. Togashi also got an honourable mention for his manga Jura no Mizuki in Shueisha's 1988 first annual Hop Step Award Selection magazine. An editor of Weekly Shonen Jump contacted Togashi, who was in his senior year of college, and requested that he should move to Tokyo. Togashi's first published work for Shueisha, who published Weekly Shonen Jump, was I'm Not Afraid of the Wolf in 1989. This manga was a series of short comedy stories. Between 1989 and 1990, Togashi authored a manga titled An Ill-Tempered Cupid in Heaven, a romance manga about the romantic relationship between a human boy and a devil girl. And in 1990, Yoshihiro Togashi really made a name for himself with his next project, Yu Yu Hakusho. Yu Yu Hakusho was intended to be a supernatural series that followed the adventures of the recently deceased high school student Yusuke Urameshi, becoming a spirit detective aided by Botan, who is a guide to the spirit world, working for Koenma, the ruler of Spirit World. Togashi moves away from this initial idea, and Yu Yu Hakusho shifts to a battle shonen in the early stages of the manga, while still keeping a tight grasp on occultism and spirituality being an essential foundation that Togashi uses to build on. Buddhism and Eastern Asian mythology have also a profound influence on the series. Togashi's characterization, developing relationships and chemistry is of the highest standard, compared to any other shonen series, and is one of the biggest strengths of this series.
Why don't you quit hugging me, you weirdo?
You're the one hugging, I was trying to squeeze you to death.
Yu Yu Hakusho follows the gang of Yusuke Urameshi, his high school rival and fellow no-good Yankee tough guy Kazuma Kuwabara, Fox Demon residing in the body of a well-mannered high schooler Kurama, and the anti-hero demon swordsman Hiei. Personality clashes and conflicts have the gang forming bonds over time with the struggles they come up against. With the main focus centering around Yusuke Urameshi, it's fascinating how Togashi chooses to write his lead protagonist. Yusuke is fighting an uphill battle in his personal life. He lacks any real strong, stable role model, since his father isn't in the picture, and his mother, who gave birth to him when she was only 14 years old, is a 28-year-old alcoholic. His teachers have zero faith in Yusuke having any potential, the only exceptions being Keiko, his school principal, and of course, Genkai. Keiko sticks with Yusuke through thick and thin, always defending him, never afraid to get in his face and hit him with some home truths. Togashi has stated in interviews that Keiko is his least favourite character in the series, because she is the typical manga girl. Yoshihiro Togashi is a horror fan, Dawn of the Dead and Don't Look Up being his favourites. Could be a coincidence, but the possessed people attacking Keiko and Botan have a striking resemblance to the zombies in Dawn of the Dead. Togashi's big interest in occultism influenced the development of the series, also being the foundation for the series to be built on. This aspect wouldn't change even when the series shifts its focus to a battle shonen. While it would be more predictable to push towards a much darker interpretation like what Go Nagai did with Devilman, Togashi uses similar themes with a different perspective. The artifacts of darkness are based on the imperial regalia of Japan. This segment is most fondly remembered for introducing us to Kurama and Hiei early in the series. Occultism is done with a very broad reach. not necessarily being shown as nihilistic or dark, but has the potential to take that shape depending on the characters and their motivations. Toguro, the most iconic antagonist in the anime and manga, devoid of any compassion, possessing godlike strength, with no sympathy for any opponent. He is introduced as a calm, cold-blooded, brutal fighter with an immense amount of power.
Surely you didn't think you'd actually beaten me. Money decided that fight long before you entered the ring. But don't be angry. You might soon have a chance to fight me on fair terms and not get so easily crushed.
Why don't you get to the point, Muscles? I've got better things to do with my time than waste it with you.
You're afraid of me.
What? Amused is more like it.
There's no one here to impress Yusuke, and I can see your entire body shaking. The ability to fear your enemies is one of your strengths. It forces you to reach your potential. But you haven't been scared enough. You need some motivation, and that's why I've come here. To show you my true power! I only used 20% of my strength when I fought with you and your friend.
After Toguro encounters Yusuke, he has the obsessive desire to fight him. When Yusuke returns home from the spirit world, Toguro reveals himself to Yusuke. At the building site, Toguro reveals 60% of his strength. Togoro's presence is the most intimidating of any previous antagonist, as he is obviously far superior than any opponent Yusuke has come across with unwavering dedication. He tells Yusuke to enter the Dark Tournament, or he will kill all of his loved ones.
Understand, this is the last time I will save your life. 2 months from now, a martial arts competition will be taking place.
Oh, sounds like fun.
With no spectators, this confrontation is very intimate, building with tension as Toguro demonstrates that he is a real serious threat. Ultimately revealed that Toguro's intentions are to be killed using his full strength against Yusuke Urameshi. Toguro's will is to die in battle at the hands of a human, an obsession that comes from a traumatic event that took the lives of all his students at the hands of a demon called Kairen, who was the previous champion of the Dark Tournament. Toguro defeats Kairen at the Dark Tournament and wishes to become a similar demon, hoping that one day he would be defeated and killed in combat by a human for his own absolution. It would, without question, be easier for Togashi to create a two-dimensional villain, but a part of what makes Togashi so influential and beloved is his phenomenal characters. Detail, well-rounded personality traits, mannerisms, motivations, attitudes, actions, reactions, that's what makes his characters stand out. Toguro is no exception. From a typical heartless killer to a deep psychological character with a philosophy behind his acts of violence. Togashi in a doujinshi interview stated, "Around that time, the protagonists had been developed completely and were no fun to write about, so the amount of emotion I put into the villains became much stronger."
H.R. Giger is the creator of The Alien and perhaps the greatest occult artist of his time. At his studio in Switzerland, he releases the darkness within himself by transforming it into something which all the world can see.
The ideas, they come sometimes from dreams or from bad things, and I go to realize it and then I work it out. It's like a kind of exorcism. mostly people look at my paintings for the first time, they are a little bit disturbed and they think that I'm completely crazy. Images in my paintings are evil, but you can't say that I'm evil. That's just the paradise. For me, it's the hell.
The work of H.R. Giger has had a profound influence on Togashi. Giger's biomechanical nightmares most noticeably inspiring the look of the stadium in the Dark Tournament. Even down to smaller elements, these design influences will keep popping up throughout the series, and it's always great to see the creative ways Togashi can implement them into the environment. Body horror also shows an influence, especially being more prominent in the visuals of the manga. David Cronenberg is the master of body horror. Rather than focus his body horror films on a masked killer chasing teenagers, he's focused on existential horror and the nemesis being something on the inside, something you can't fight or run from. Horrific transformations that were representing deeper psychological horror. Since Togashi is a big horror fan, he most definitely is aware of these films and the huge impact they had on the genre.
What do you think really represents your films?
Well, you were talking about the exploding head, but in fact, I think it really has, my films tend to be very body conscious. The body and what it is and what it does and what it can do tends to be very central in my films, and it was never a conscious thing, but I gradually realized that I was more interested in things that happen inside you, mentally and physically, than I was in a kind of exterior threat, which is why you could, I think, legitimately say that none of my films are monster movies in that sense. In fact, to a certain extent, it's your own body that's the monster, your own existence.
Having well-drawn characters and environments showing his cross-hatching abilities, he can seamlessly transition from fun and humorous over exaggerated expressions to serious methodical line work with beautiful and anatomical definition and atmospheric inking techniques fused with his creative use of tones and negative space. Togashi is able to show moments of high adrenaline, fast-paced action and movement with great care and consideration by his assistants following his directions. Kunio Ujino worked as an assistant to Yoshihiro Togashi on Yu Yu Hakusho and has himself created the manga Sensei Hakusho, detailing his experience working with his sensei. It reveals how dedicated Togashi is, with a highly focused, intensely concentrated desire for creating manga. We get to see Togashi's views on separating his responsibilities from the responsibilities of his assistants, how he offers criticism when he must, but he never tears down those he is working with and considers them his peers. Even though he is seen as a mentor to these assistants, he is also a good friend. Ujino shows us how a bond of trust builds over time as he makes small mistakes occasionally and apologizes to Togashi, who eases his anxiety in those situations and gives Ujino tips on things to do to create the most successful results. Togashi isn't a very talkative person. He is someone who is extremely focused with a strong work ethic, pushing his mental and physical health to its limit to produce the best work he can. Ujino addresses Togashi's obsessive passion for video games in the manga, something that is a constant source of speculation for some fans on his reoccurring hiatus. There are times when his art leans more into a serious style and not so heavy on cartooning characteristics he established earlier on. I personally really love seeing Togashi use heavy brush and ink style. Towards the end of the series, the art drastically becomes more sparse, an obvious way of saving time. It's at this time that Yoshihiro Togashi was aware of his health and knew he had to bring the series to a close. Even with its large fan base and popularity, he could no longer continue at his previous standard. Around the time Yusuke was fighting Sensui, when I didn't want to draw manga anymore, and I felt nauseous just sitting down to draw, I asked the editorial office if I could quit Yu Yu Hakusho. Yu Yu Hakusho animator Akiyuki Shimbo from a 2005 interview with Animage. How was Yu Yu Hakusho for you? Even you ask how it was. I definitely can't look at it again. Looking back, I wonder if I could have done it better now. Like Doctor's episode in Yu Yu Hakusho, wasn't your style already perfected there with the special colour schemes and fluid movement and all? It wasn't just me, it was Atsushi Wakabayashi, who was the animation director at the time. I wanted to use black and added a lot of movement, but I still think Wakabayashi-san's help was huge. But still, Yu Yu Hakusho was the work you put quite an effort into. You are right, I was putting utmost effort into it. You've got quite a number of episodes under your belt. For many of the episodes I was able to do direction from storyboards drawn by Motosuke Takahashi. Being able to work on Takahashi-san's episode, I feel really grateful. I didn't know anything about directing, so I asked him to teach me all kinds of stuff. After all is said and done, I think Takahashi-san has become my mentor. Shimbo and Wakabayashi are highly regarded as a perfect team of animators that complement each other. Every time they are collaborating with each other, it's truly spectacular. Yusuke vs. the Doctor is some of the finest action, atmospheric staging, and beautifully dynamic Sakuga animation. Which episode in Yu Yu Hakusho left the deepest impression on you? Definitely the episode 58 with Black Dragon Wave. That was the episode that made me do whatever I wanted to do at the time. There was also scheduled upkeep, so I worked on it carefully. There are some parts that I ended up regretting, but I thought it could be the culmination of what I've done before. It was Shinbo's storyboard being great, so a realization that maybe this could be done properly on a storyboard level after all crossed my mind. Not only animation, I do think the episode is about both direction and animation going well together. I see. Still, is Yu Yu Hakusho episode 58 the highest pinnacle to you? Although the pinnacle is episode 58, my personal favourite is episode 74, the episode where Dr. Kamiya appears. I was thinking that I could personally subliminate that episode. When I see it now, there are tons of premature parts which I can't bear to watch for a moment. However, I think that was the best I could do as an animation supervisor. Yu Yu Hakusho has had an impact on a new generation of creators such as Tite Kubo. Many fans of both Bleach and Yu Yu Hakusho have noticed the undeniable similarities between the two. Masayoshi Kishimoto has never shied away from expressing his admiration for Yoshihiro Togashi's work. Kishimoto stated during a discussion with Yoshihiro Togashi, "I was already a big fan of Hiei back when I was only a reader, but I've also took him as a source of inspiration when I started creating my characters. At first I wasn't able to create a cool character, I didn't know where to begin, so I studied one of my favourite characters, Hiei, and I succeeded in creating Sasuke. The Sharingan as well as some of his other techniques were inspired by him." A lot of hype circles around the Dark Tournament, for good reason, as it builds anticipation and then the tournament itself cranks up to the threat level of an explosive finale. But this somewhat overshadows the fantastic Chapter Black arc in Yu Yu Hakusho. Togashi's well known for being a hardcore gamer and a fan of Dragon Quest. I feel like this is the first arc we get pushing towards ideas of strategic scenarios above what we have come to expect of outwitting your opponent beyond endurance and combat to get the upper hand, but rather demonstrating well thought out obstacles to overcome. This seems to mirror an approach used by JRPGs. As much as Yu Yu Hakusho has influenced so many creators, it's impossible to ignore reference to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure with the introduction of territories. Togashi addressed this in one of his interviews. The inspiration for the territories was, you know what? Yep, you know what. I wanted the readers to laugh it off, a simple parody, but they seemed to think I was just plagiarizing. So that was awkward. Both Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter establish a firm grasp of the worlds and the way that they function. Then, Togashi completely flips that by introducing more complexity with a power system that goes far beyond our understanding of both series. Nen for Hunter x Hunter and the territories for Yu Yu Hakusho. This happens again with the last arc with Demon World and the tournament that follows. The Demon World segment is the part of the story that most reminds me of Hunter x Hunter. Togashi has often gone back to looking at what worked well in Yu Yu Hakusho across the series and reimagining those pieces for Hunter x Hunter. Yu Yu Hakusho had some short OVAs entitled Aizo Hakusho, a combination of short segments and montages. 2 movies were released. The first one, along with the OVAs, would get a release by Funimation and an English dub by the English cast, but the second movie, Yu Yu Hakusho Poltergeist Report, would be dubbed by Central Park Media with different actors. The first film seems like just a lost episode of the series. It's got a lot of humour and action in its short runtime. The animation looks good and can compete with the best animated quality of the series. It's a self-contained story that has a conclusion by the end. The second movie is typical anime film length. I've seen this film a number of times, and on my first viewing, the most jarring experience is the English dub. None of the original English cast appears in the film, and it can be hard for fans to adjust to this dub, not just because some of the characters can be seen as vastly different in their delivery of the dialogue, but also the acting isn't as expressive. The Japanese audio is the best way to experience the film, to not distract you from the quality of the animation. Visually, Poltergeist Report is truly phenomenal. Nothing has been spared in creating such a fantastic piece of animation, from backgrounds, fluid fight scenes, to a colour palette and an aesthetic commonality of a film like Demon City Shinjuku. The rhythms of the story and gradient neon colour schemes, overall tone of the film, especially the end reaching apocalyptic levels as seen in a Yoshiaki Kawajiri film, with contributions by some of the industry's greatest talents. In 2018, a new OVA adapted the bonus chapter Two Shot and the penultimate chapter All or Nothing. The animation fits with high standard animation of today, really giving anime and Yu Yu Hakusho fans a taste of more of Togashi's shonen adventure series. Funimation in 2019 announced they plan to release the OVA with the English dub cast. As well as having a number of video games based on the series, a Japanese Netflix live-action adaptation is currently in the works. Togashi could have settled on Yu Yu Hakusho being his defining masterpiece, and for many it is. Hunter x Hunter is another masterwork that stands equally or above the standard he set on Yu Yu Hakusho, depending on which you prefer, but that's a story for another day. Like, subscribe, and keep living in fiction.